Hi, I'm Lexi, and you're listening to L.U.K with Lexi. My podcast focuses on people who are working extremely hard and doing extraordinary things. Today's guest is Trevor Roznowski, or as most people know him, T-Roz. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
Our first question is, where did the nickname T-Roz come from?
That's a great question. If you might know Matt Majinski in the community, I think he was one of the first people to coin the term T-Roz. It follows pretty naturally from the name. A lot of my friends, family even call me T-Roz now. It's just kind of permeated everything I do. And it's, something that as I started my teaching and coaching career, I try to shy away from a little bit, but I think it's an endearing nickname, so I kind of embrace it.
T-Roz is an Alpena High School graduate, former track athlete from Ferris State University, former Alpena High School teacher, and he's now assistant track coach, throws at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. So growing up in Alpena, did you like to hunt and fish a lot?
Definitely a big hunter. I grew up hunting. My family has a big tradition of doing so. It's something that even this year I was able to come home around Thanksgiving in November for rifle season and enjoy that time, that tradition with my family. Fishing I was never big into. I like to ice fish, but we haven't had the winters for it the last couple of years. But no, fishing not as much, but definitely hunting. Just doing things, being active with my family is something I grew up on and really enjoyed.
Definitely. So let's start with Alpena High School. Fun fact, T-Roz was homecoming king. So what sports did you play in high school?
I was a 3-sport athlete in high school, football, basketball in the winter, and then track and field in the spring. I enjoyed all of them. I played baseball a lot growing up too, and then kind of came a time when I was a freshman in high school and had to decide if it's going to be baseball or throwing. I thought that my style lent itself to throwing a little bit more. I really enjoyed lifting weights at that time and being active in that way. So kind of went that direction, and it certainly paid off. It led me in a direction I had never anticipated, and it's really awesome to look back on some of those first moments being exposed to track and field in junior high and then making that ultimate decision that led me to where I am today.
Definitely. Was track kind of your main sport?
Yeah, between track and football, I think I was aspiring to do either or in college, heading out of high school. I had some different opportunities to play football, to go and throw at different colleges coming out of high school. Ultimately, I think I chose my body. I wanted to, not take a beating over 4 or 5 more years, playing college football. So, and I really enjoyed throwing. I think track is such a, at its core, the work you do is very individualistic. You get out what you put in, and doing that with your teammates, growing every day is something that I really appreciate about the sport. So that's kind of where I jumped into track and field and kind of put all my eggs in that basket and decided that was what I wanted to do in college.
What kind of things did you do to help you become a collegiate athlete?
I think becoming a student of the sport is really what was big for me. I look back at some of the early influences I had in track and field, people like Jamie Bullis, who was my high school throws coach. He and I did a lot of learning together of what it took to, be effective technically, to get stronger, to have the right mindset going into competition. That was huge. I think I look at my first coach, my throws coach, Don Swider, as a junior high athlete, was just so passionate about helping me become the best I could be. And that really led to meeting other people in the throws community, like going out to camps in Pennsylvania, learning from people like Coach Matt Ellis, Coach Gary Aldrich. Those were huge influences on me as a high school athlete, leading into my development. You look at all my coaches, really, Coach Mark Jacobs, who did the Woods Track Club for a number of years. He was super inspiring. Just all those people that really poured into me and allowed me to develop a love for the sport. I think it, comes back to that, really developing a love and a passion for the sport. And that's what, gave me the ability to do the work, to be in the weight room, to work on my technique, to, try to uplift my teammates. Because I think, healthy competition breeds a lot of excellence too. So, always wanting to better myself and better the team was what ultimately led to being able to compete collegiately.
So after high school, you went to Ferris and you were a thrower. So kind of tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, I had a wonderful experience at Ferris State. I come in working with some great athletes. One of my roommates was the eventual school record holder in the hammer throw. So it was awesome to learn from him. Working under Coach Larry Levine, who's, just an awesome guide, mentor in the sport. I think, being a student of the sport really developed for me in college, where I first kind of saw that I might want to continue my coaching career because of how much he helped me learn the event, how much he helped me learn, in the weight room, things like that. And then, eventually meeting and developing relationships with some of my best friends, through college. Two of my best friends, Bree Copley and Emma Steffen, both of them went on to throw for 5 years at Ferris State. Bree Copley was the school record holder in shot put and discus.
Wow.
Just awesome friends that I was able to make through that experience. But the whole collegiate track experience, traveling around, we had a really good team culture, especially through like my junior and senior year. We got really close. Junior year, of course, had to deal with COVID. That was my, the COVID year was my junior year of college. So was really excited about how training was going. We had a really good team camaraderie. And then all of a sudden we're not competing, not practicing. We're having team meetings on Zoom, from my parents' basement, doing some college schoolwork to finish out the year. That was a really interesting time. But then being able to, have that experience my junior year, come back for one more year as a senior and really pour everything I had into it. I actually picked up shot put again. I hadn't thrown shot put in a couple of years as I focused a little bit more on discus and hammer throw. But I said, it's my last year. I might as well pour everything I have into it, and ended up doing fairly well as a senior, all conference and discus. I really enjoyed hammer throw and shot put. Just made some great memories that I was really happy to go out with.
That's awesome. What were days kind of like for you with like classes and workouts?
Yeah, so I was a mathematics secondary education major with a minor in chemistry. So math education, chemistry education was kind of the direction I headed. So very heavy into math and science, as you might imagine. I was taking, Calc 2, Calc 3. Calc 3 ended up being one of the classes I finished from my parents' basement during COVID. That was an interesting experience. But that, some organic chemistry, all sorts of stuff like that. And then a lot of education courses. So that was probably the hardest thing to balance, I think, as I got into my junior and senior year of college, was I had to do some student teaching experiences. So I was, going to practice sometimes in the morning or in the afternoon, depending on the day when my classes were. Then I was also, out in the field doing some student teaching at different local high schools. I was in a local middle school doing some student teaching, working with the classes. It was the biggest thing was, making sure I communicated with my coaches, making sure I communicated with the people that I was doing those student teaching experiences with, to let them know when I would be there, when I could make it to practice. But really, I think the biggest thing was balancing, making time for schoolwork, making time for, nutrition, recovery, all that stuff that goes with, being an athlete, lifting and practicing. Yeah, my days were a lot of fun, though. I would say I definitely prioritized both school and athletics, which I really appreciated about my college career. But really, yeah, finding that balance and then communicating to both parties that where I'd be when was able to help me be as successful as possible.
Was it kind of hard to balance school and track?
At times, like I say, I give a lot of time to academics. I was kind of a nerd in college. I don't think that's ever really changed. Now I can focus my nerdiness in a little bit more fun and productive direction, I think. But it was difficult at times. There were a lot of late nights of studying, but I knew, ultimately, I was wanting to work with people in education. I was, wanting to learn more about the content that I would teach and communicate to my students. So that was all worth it, I think, putting that time in. But then I think as I got older and matured a little bit more, realized the importance of, recovery, sleep, nutrition, things like that in my competition, as a track and field athlete. So I think throughout the maturation process and seeing my elder teammates do it helped me learn that balance.
Yeah. Kind of run us through like a track competition, like how many schools, how long?
Yeah. So in college, Ferris State, we competed in the GLIAC, the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. So a lot of schools around Michigan. Actually, the conference has gotten smaller, lost some schools. Like Northwood was in the conference at one time, Ashland in Ohio, Tiffin even before I got there in Ohio were all in the conference. It's shrunk a little bit, but we mostly competed against schools in Michigan. A lot of our meets were at Grand Valley State University, about an hour down the road from Ferris State, which was very convenient. As much as we like to say, we don't travel very far for competition, it's also very nice that we didn't have to go very far to compete against some really high level schools.
Yeah.
So, mostly Michigan schools. We'd see some schools from Wisconsin, some schools from Indiana, like Parkside, Indiana Tech, definitely some schools from Ohio. But I thought one of the coolest things was we competed against all different levels. So we were Division II Ferris State, but we also competed against, Michigan State would come to our meets. So sometimes like Michigan would send some throwers unattached. Grand Valley is an outstanding program in their own right at the Division II level, several national championships while I was there. So they were always trying to push the envelope against us. Northwood had some great throwers. Even Davenport now is kind of emerging as a track and field power. So it was a very competitive conference. As far as how long competitions were, sometimes 2 days, typically a Friday, Saturday is how the competitions would be. We would throw 1 or 2 events, usually hammer and javelin on Friday, and then shot put and discus on Saturday. A lot of your multi-events, so like your heptathlon, decathlon, were on Friday and Saturday. So that's kind of where we bounced there. But a majority of the meet was on Saturday. So sometimes as throwers, we did more traveling and, attending meets than some of our, sprinter, hurdler teammates, because we would go to both days of a meet and they would maybe just come for Saturday. But sometimes some long days, we did end up doing a little bit longer trips. My senior year, we went to Western Kentucky University, and that was fun to compete against some schools down there. Like Middle Tennessee State was there, Kentucky, like there were some big schools, and it was fun to, be in the mix against some of those athletes.
Some advice you'd give high school students who want to become a collegiate athlete?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is finding a mentor, coaches that are going to push you, kind of show you the ropes. Like I said, I think all the coaches that I had growing up really helped me develop a love for the game that helped me be a student of the sport. That was the biggest thing for me. Just learning to appreciate my sport, that led me to pour so much into what I love to do. What can I do in the weight room? What can I do with my technique? What can I do watching videos? I remember watching YouTube videos in high school over and over, and then, just finding other people I can learn from to help me push to be the best I can.
What degree did you graduate with from Ferris?
Yeah, so it was a mathematics secondary education degree, Bachelor of Science with a chemistry minor, and that was in actually December of 2021. I graduated while I was doing my student teaching here in Alpena.
Oh, wow. Okay. So then after Ferris, you became a high school math teacher at Alpena High School, and then a football and track coach, which everyone at Alpena came to love you. You were even voted graduate speaker in 2023. So kind of talk about like your experience with teaching, because it's not always easy, like coaching and teaching.
Sure. And I think kind of my story to, getting back to Alpena is interesting too. I was actually set up to student teach a couple different places. One was in Greenville at Greenville High School. I was going to be in an algebra classroom, working with a student teacher mentor who was the varsity softball coach, which I thought was awesome. Then it kind of morphed into I was going to be in a middle school setting at Morley-Stanwood High School, just south, or Morley-Stanwood Middle School, just south of Big Rapids, where Ferris State University is. And then there kind of came an opening at Alpena High School where, they were in need of a math teacher. I needed to do my student teaching. So it worked where I was able to do my student teaching and teach math, which was awesome. So I kind of jumped right in, not a traditional student teaching role. I was kind of on my own, but, learning from some great mentors and applying some of my own practices. So that was really neat, jumping right in there. But yeah, I think it was tough initially, not having that guidance in the classroom. I kind of had to learn and figure things out a lot for myself, but I think there's a ton of value in that too. I was able to kind of shape out my own practices, figure out what worked best for me. And I think that continued, every year that I taught, it changed a little bit more, morphed a little bit more into, what was best for me, what was best for my students. And, was able to build some really great relationships. I think that taking the time, especially in the beginning of the year, to like set the tone for what we do in the classroom, the expectations was huge, then it saved some time later, when things would go wrong in the classroom, that's kind of not what we're about in this classroom. So, having that understanding early on was awesome. But then, kind of wrapping my head around the content, I think was one of the tougher things, especially teaching math at the high school level. There's some challenging concepts that even I had to revisit, going back, what is this? How am I best going to communicate this to my students? So I think that was one of the tougher things for me, but was able to definitely work through that. And again, with the help of some great mentors, have a couple really successful years teaching.
Yeah, I was really mad when you left because I knew you weren't going to be my math teacher.
And I think, we'll talk about it more, but I was also sad to leave. But
yeah. So now you're a college assistant track and field coach at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. How is it going, and was it hard to make the decision to leave Alpena?
I will start with the second part of that question. It was definitely one of the hardest decisions I've had to make in my life to go there. For me, though, I don't think there was a better time for me to take a leap and a chance on something like this. It was an awesome opportunity. Loved when I was able to go out there and interview, meet the people that I'd be working with. It just seemed like a phenomenal opportunity. That said, I had wonderful things going here in Alpena, just some great connections. I felt very fortunate to come back here and work with, students, athletes, colleagues in the community that I grew up in. I think having that opportunity to give back and hopefully make things better than what I had is kind of my goal, coming back here. That was always super inspiring to me. It was really tough to leave, being close to my family, all my family's in the area, having so many of my friends here, making some great connections over a couple of years, teaching, coaching, being involved in the community. It was incredibly challenging to make that decision to leave. However, I also saw the other side of it, that I'm still fairly young, there's a lot of things I want to experience and try. I think it was a great opportunity and time for me to take the leap and work with, again, I'm finding, more awesome people, more incredible colleagues to work with in Wisconsin. So yes, definitely, when I say, it took a long time to make the decision, it was, days, pondering it over, talking it over with some of my closest mentors, is this going to be what's right for me? And I think ultimately, even if it wasn't right for me, it was the best time to, take a risk, take a chance. And I think I'm finding that it was well worth the decision. I'm absolutely loving what I'm doing. So yeah, University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. It is in the southeast corner of Wisconsin. So we're about an hour from Milwaukee, 2 hours from Chicago, 45 minutes from Madison, where the capital is, and the big University of Wisconsin-Madison is, the Badgers. It's a really neat area. It's a very rural community. The college, the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater is kind of the biggest show in town, but just phenomenal people. I work with some great people, both as an academic advisor, which is one half of my job, where I'm working with a lot of college freshmen, helping them navigate their schedules, choose different courses, help them with their major exploration, things like that. But then also if they end up on probation, helping them make a plan for success, how we're going to get off, academic probation. And then, then the other part of my day, the other part of my job is working with collegiate athletes. I coach the throws, so hammer throw, weight throw, discus, and shot put. We have a ton of fun. I have a group of about 14 throwers that I work with, and that's part of a larger team of 120 athletes. So it's a big group of athletes. It's super competitive. It's super high energy because they're all, pushing one another toward, the highest level of success they can achieve. And I think the coolest thing is we're part of a really competitive conference over there in Wisconsin. It's the WIAC or WIAC, the Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. And there's all those universities of Wisconsin system schools. So like UW Oshkosh, UW La Crosse, UW Eau Claire, that are all really competitive. So we're all competing for different athletes when we're recruiting. We're all competing, super highly in our conference. So there's really a level of excellence that we're pursuing. And that was one of the big draws too, considering taking the position there was, is this a school where we're going to be really competitive athletically? And the answer is yes, because they pursue and strive for that every day. And I like being a part of that.
That's awesome. What's the college feel kind of like, and how is it like different from Alpena?
College feel, I think, because there's so much newness for, college freshmen, college students, exploring what they really want to do with their lives, what they really want to do beyond high school. I think that's a really neat feel that you don't necessarily get in high school, where, high school students are still kind of figuring out what they'd like to do, kind of navigating those paths. Now college students are acting on it, taking those classes, being involved in some different organizations that they might not have had access to in their high school or, in their hometown. That's really cool to see, so many students, the hustle and bustle of campus is awesome. So many different projects and activities going on. It's neat to be a part of. Just, walking campus this fall, and they had different student organization fairs, like all the different things that students can be involved in. It's awesome. I really appreciate that. We do have a fairly large campus. So we have, even though it's rural, it's in a rural area, we have 12,000 students. So there's a lot of people, a lot of different things to be involved in. And that I really appreciate too, is just, there's always something going on, and there's a lot of cool things to be a part of for students and faculty alike.
Yeah. Is there like recruitment for the team or cuts and stuff?
Yeah. So recruiting is definitely competitive. Like I said, in our conference, you're competing against a lot of other schools. There's not a big Division II, athletic scene in Wisconsin. It's like Division I schools like Marquette, UW Milwaukee, the University of Wisconsin at Madison, the big one that everybody knows in Wisconsin. And then it's a lot of Division III programs. So the Division III scene is very competitive. I would say, our program overall is probably more competitive than the program I came from at Ferris State, even though it's Division II. So recruiting is definitely, a big time challenge, but also, opportunity for me to make connections with coaches, make connections with different athletes in the area. It's awesome. And then as far as, cuts on the other end of things, we're trying to assemble the most competitive roster we can for our competitions. With different budgetary concerns and things like that, we do have a limit on what we can have on our team. So that makes it tough. As a coaching staff, we had to make some really tough decisions here the last couple of weeks. After our fall training block, which ran from, October through mid-December, when we had our inter squad meet or kind of see where everybody's at, we take into account, how are students doing their classes? How are students testing in the weight room? We do some different athletic tests like, jumps, sprints, overhead, shot put, throw to test where athletes are. And then of course that inter squad meet, how do they actually compete, in a competition setting? All of that kind of factors into their overall, grade, how we rank student athletes, and then ultimately decides their status on the team. So we actually had, 85 student athletes try out for our men's roster, and that had to be cut down to 60. So,
that's a lot.
Deciding, between which 25 athletes would make the final cut is very challenging. So, but we go as a coaching staff and talk about our athletes, but it's challenging when you're looking at your jumpers versus your throwers versus your distance athletes. Who's going to provide the most value to the team, and there's a little bit of a cutthroat aspect to it, right? We want the best for our team. Sometimes you have really great student athletes that work hard, but they're just not at the level of competitiveness that we need them to be. My job, though, I look at it from the throws coach perspective, is I want my athletes to be those ones that make the final cut and are able to provide value to the team, are able to score points in meets. So that's what we strive for every day at practice.
Yeah. What are kind of your ultimate goals with coaching?
That's a great question. I think I'm still exploring them. I love coaching the throws. I think that's the event that I know best, that I have come to love. Ultimately, I would love to be maybe a head coach. I think, our head coach, Michael Johnson, is a fantastic role model for me. He's a great mentor. I think when I was a head coach here, there are a lot of things that I tried to do for the track and field program, just organization, fundraising, different drills, different things that we can bring for our athletes and have them be able to take advantage of. That said, there were things like spreadsheets. I tried to make master documents and things so we can have all of our resources collected. Coach Johnson has that times 4 on just about everything that I had an idea for. So, he has a staff informational website, like where it has all of those documents that I tried to, cram into one spreadsheet. And it's just really nicely laid out. He's done this for 15, 16 years. He's got a athlete information dashboard that he sends out to all the athletes. There's things on nutrition, proper recovery, different, warm up and stretching routines that they can do. He's just so thorough. He has a great background in nutrition, but also like exercise science. So he teaches some courses on campus as well. That's one of the coolest things about my job has been, he teaches a coaching track and field class on campus, because coaching is actually a minor.
Wow.
Coaching is a minor on campus, which is awesome. So I was able to be a guest teacher in his class and do a 50-minute session on discus and a 50-minute session on shot put. That's was one of the neatest things that you look around and say, is this really my job? Yes, it is now. So that's really neat. So ultimate goals in coaching, I don't know. I think I'd love to be a head coach at the collegiate level at some point, but for right now, just kind of trying to take in. I think I'm always reading articles and watching videos and finding new resources. I was just at a clinic a few weeks ago in Indiana, the National Throws Coaches Conference, just learning from some phenomenal coaches across the nation, trying to take in as much as I can and apply it to my throwers and hopefully build up our program and then see where that leads from there. But I'm also interested in administration, like athletic administration. I actually just finished my master's this past spring in educational administration, so maybe doing something like athletic directing or a principal at some point is not out of the question. But for right now, just loving what I'm doing in coaching.
Yeah, that's awesome. We're going to go into some fun questions, like what sports do you like to watch or follow? Yeah,
so definitely football. I've loved watching the Lions this year. Big fan of collegiate sports too. So, basketball, football, volleyball. I watch a little bit of everything. I think anytime there's sports on, I just like sometimes having ESPN or Sports Center on in the background, watching that. It's awesome. Even, the Tigers had a pretty successful run at the end of this year.
Did.
So watching them was fantastic. I haven't followed them super closely, but that was a lot of fun to follow that run.
Your favorite sports team?
Favorite sports team? Probably the Lions as of late. Definitely a Michigan State fan for collegiate sports. My dad was a Michigan State grad, so love watching them. But then, of course, now a big University of Wisconsin-Whitewater fan. Their volleyball team went to the national championship this year. Unfortunately, lost. And then Ferris State, where I went to school, they just won their 3rd national championship in football. So go Bulldogs.
Yes. What's your favorite restaurant?
My favorite restaurant? Gosh, that's a tough question. I was thinking about maybe Austin Brothers. I love their burgers.
Oh,
fantastic.
Yes.
Probably one of my favorite stops around town. Always try to go there when I'm in town.
They took their cheese curds off the menu.
Did they?
And I'm really mad about it.
Well, that's too bad. I don't know if I've ever had their curds, but yeah, I don't think you can beat their burgers. They're pretty good.
Is there some type of trip or event you would like to attend?
I've never been skiing out west, and I really like to ski.
Really?
I think that's next on my bucket list, trying to check off something like that. I would love to, do a big ski trip, spend a few days, Colorado, Utah, somewhere out there. I think it'd be fantastic.
Definitely.
I've never been to that part of the U.S. I've been to, Montana, Oregon, Washington, like a lot of the northern border of the U.S., but never like out west skiing. That's something I'd really like to do. And the Olympics in 2028 are in L.A., and I would love to go. Some of my college teammates and I have talked about that for a few years. We'd like to go.
So cool to go to the Olympics. Is there anyone you think we should have on the podcast?
One of my former, teammates, actually athletes that I coach too. Eli Winter, who's a thrower at the University of Michigan. He's in his senior year there. He was a, all Big Ten hammer thrower last year. He's a phenomenal, worker, phenomenal mentor to others. I think he'd be really cool to have on.
Yeah, sounds like it. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And if you know someone in your community who's working hard and you think they deserve some recognition, DM us at L.U.K. Unlimited Apparel on Instagram. And thank you for listening to Luck It with Lexi.
Thank you.